Hey everyone, welcome to another podcast, Big League Dreaming, the podcast. And today we have a very special show, right, Zach?
Oh yes, very special. If you follow the Mariners at all, you'll want to check this one out for sure.
It's all coming up next on Big League Dreaming, the podcast.
Since I was a kid, oh yeah, I was big league dreaming. For as long as I live, always, I'm big league dreaming.
I never got to bat in the major leagues. I'd have liked to have that chance, just once. To stare down a big league pitcher. Make him think you know something he doesn't. Chance to squint at a sky so blue that it hurts your eyes just to look at. To feel the tingle in your arm as you connect with the ball. To run the bases, stretch a double into a triple, and flop face first. Wrap your arms around the bag. That's my wish, Rick and Silla.
Welcome to Big League Dreaming, a show about fulfilling your dreams and taking it to the next level. I am John Gonzalez, and we really appreciate you tuning in this weekend. Big League Dreaming, the podcast, is all about people, places, things. It is about fulfilling your dreams. And sometimes you don't make it to the major leagues. Sometimes you might just make it to Little League World Series. In fact, on this podcast last year, we followed the team from Michigan that went all the way to the Little League World Series. But we're talking to coaches, we're talking to players, we're talking to broadcasters. And joining us is my son number one, Zach Gonzalez. And Zach, how you doing today?
Doing great. Super excited.
Yeah, we're going to get to why you're super excited in a second. But if for those of you that are just joining this show, we talked to each son, and each son's a little different. So I have three sons. This is a podcast with a dad and his three sons. We get together to talk about baseball. Son number 3 is Zane Gonzalez. He's based in South Bend, Indiana, and he's the pitching coach and the recruiting coordinator for Indiana University at South Bend, and he is a Red Sox fan. Son number 2 is Ty Gonzalez, and Ty is based here in Grand Rapids like I am. And Ty is a former baseball player as well, played in college, and he is the Mets fan. In fact, just watching the Mets game right now a few seconds ago. And then son number 1 is Zach Gonzalez. He played college baseball as well here in Grand Rapids and in Jackson. And he is based in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Zach is a Seattle Mariners fan. I am a diehard Tigers fan. So there you go. Now you know why we're kind of spread all over the place. That's another long story for the day. But Zach, I'm going to let you introduce our guest because you are the Mariners fan.
Yes, super excited. This person has been up there on my list as someone to get on the podcast, Dad. And like when we started up our podcast, it was just kind of like inspiration from him to get this thing going off the ground. So today we got Gary Hill Jr., the man himself, broadcaster from the Seattle Mariners, who started his own Mariners podcast. I want to say 2014. So special to have you here with us, Gary. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be on the podcast. Appreciate it. This is going to be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And for Zach, especially being the Mariners fan, to have you on the show. You are the executive producer, engineer for radio broadcast for the Mariners. You've been doing it for a few years now. You replaced a legendary person yourself. So we can't wait to get to your story and how you got to Seattle and how you get to your role and what you do. I'm sure you're fulfilling your dreams and you're taking it to the next level. But we would love to kind of catch up a little bit about what's going on with the Mariners, because I know you and Zach could probably talk for hours about this team. 3-game series you just came off against the Astros. You know, you're riding high from the home run derby, the 14-game winning streak. You know, the baseball world was like, oh, wait a minute, the Mariners, I thought they were kind of a bad team this year. And all of a sudden they were good last year. They surprised people. Then this year they were kind of bad to start. Now they got on this winning streak. They got this hot player that did awesome in the home run derby. And then it just kind of, what happened?
Yeah, it wasn't the start to the second half we were all hoping for. But the streak was amazing. 14 in a row, just one shy of the franchise record. And when you're in that kind of thing, it's like, well, they're never going to lose again. This is amazing. It was incredible. What's going to be interesting for the Mariners their first couple of weeks, a lot of Astros, a lot of Yankees in the first 2 weeks. So it's tough out of the gates, like 13 of the first 20 in the second half, Yankees, Astros. So they're kind of in a really tough part of the schedule. If they can tread some water, because it softens up on paper, they have one of the easiest schedules after this initial stretch. So they have a chance to really make a run at things. Now we'll see if they can stay healthy. Mariners have been waiting for a couple of guys to come back. We've seen Lewis come back, waiting for Haniger. And then at the same time, you lose Julio for 3 games. Winker got hurt today. We'll see what happens there, but you're hoping Julio comes back healthy. So we have not yet seen this team fully healthy yet, but they're certainly playing better baseball. So I think it's going to be a really exciting second half. And the American League is just, after the top 2, Astros and Yankees, it just feels like it's completely up in the air after that.
It really does, and it's going to be fun to see how this plays out. And I don't think it's a sure thing it's going to be either Astros or Yankees either, because you know how this goes, right? You've been in baseball your whole life. I mean, when it gets down to the stretch, anything can happen. But Zach, you've been talking about this season for a while. It started last year. Well, on the podcast, we've talked about your Mariners quite a bit. But you've been, unlike the Tigers, where we have this, these thoughts of like, okay, we're in the rebuild, we're going to get there, it's going to be our year. Tiger fans kind of like, no, it's not going to happen. But I mean, you've been a Mariners fan your whole life. You saw this coming.
Yeah, I mean, this year and next year is kind of like the window, right? You see a lot of these huge prospects, they're graduating, they're here. You got a couple guys right on the cusp that are getting big time experience right now, hoping for some playoff experience this year to take into next year as well. This is their window. So the next couple weeks here, see what they can add to the team, because before this, it was all rebuilds, stockpiling the young talent, all these college players, and then the Julio, who we knew he was coming. So right now, I mean, after this playoff drought, we're all just hoping and praying, man, that this is the time.
Gary Hill Jr., you went Julio on the big stage in the home run derby really opened up a lot of eyes on a national level, wouldn't you say?
No doubt about it. He has been incredible to watch. He has blown away my expectations. He has been, I mean, what we've seen play out, it looks like that's a superstar in the making. We have watched Soto from afar and Acuna from afar, Tatis just kind of explode onto the scene. And that's what we feel Julio has done. He has, in all phases, offensively, defensively, on the bases, he has been incredible. And I talk about all the time, it has never been as hard to hit the ball in Major League Baseball than it is right now. And especially for young players getting their first taste of things. And the line for him was after May 1st, because the first month was a little uneasy as he was getting his footing. He didn't have a home run in the first month. But if you look at it since May 1st, he's been one of the best hitters in the game. And for someone who's 21, who's a rookie, who hasn't had a lot of high level at bats, this has been pretty incredible to watch. And I think the people that have seen him in the division quite a bit get it. But this was the first time I think a national audience has seen what Julio is about. And he did not disappoint on the national stage. That was a show he put on. But that's what we've been watching every day. He is the kind of guy that you don't want to take your eyes off of, because he has the it factor too. It's not just the production that we've seen. He's got the it. Like, you just want to watch everything he's doing. In center field, he just glides around. I mean, he's enormous, right? But he's so fast. He's a driveway guy. If you're listening to the radio in the car and he's batting, you're like, well, I'm just going to sit here to see what happens. If you're in the ballpark, you're not going to get popcorn. I mean, you're watching what he's going to do next. He's been so fun to watch. It has been so awesome.
And Zach, as a Mariners fan, where the comparisons come, right? I mean, you're a Griffey fan. I mean, talk about a driveway player, right? Alex Rodriguez in his prime coming up as a kid, he was a driveway guy as well, right? I had a chance to see him, by the way, here in Grand Rapids when he played minor league baseball. He played minor league baseball for a hot minute, and I actually got to the field just to watch him, play one inning because I really wanted to watch him play. But Zach, this is I hate the comparisons, but they're there, right?
Yeah, you see it on Twitter every single day, the side by side, him and Griffey with the stats and how close they are. I mean, I know he's thriving off of that and he loves it. He feeds off the energy. But it's hard to compare him to that, right? Because he's so far away from what Griffey has done for the whole city, right? But the fact that the numbers are so close, it's just mind blowing, honestly.
Does that surprise you, Gary?
Oh, absolutely. Because I was here for Griffey and to watch that play out, and Alex Rodriguez watched that play out. And, even now watching what we've seen from Julio, part of me is just like, okay, let's slow down a little bit. I mean, he's been great, but it's still a rookie. We don't know how it's going to play out. And then I watch him that night, and it's just like, well, he's amazing. He's amazing. But yeah, you're right. It is unfair to compare him to Griffey because he is one of the greatest of all time. And the comparisons are going to happen because he's doing it in the Mariners uniform. Griffey did it in the Mariners uniform. But I think it speaks to just what he's been like to even be compared to what A-Rod did in a Mariners uniform early on and what Griffey did as well. I think that it just speaks to how good he's been. Just incredible.
Well, one last thing just to wrap up the Julio stuff, although I know we could probably do a whole show on just him. But in Tigerland, we have Riley Green that just came up, the center fielder for the Tigers, a young player as well with the same kind of excitement, incredible defensive player, gets on base. He's the leadoff guy right now. But, we also had a 1-1 make his debut for the Tigers this year with Spencer Torkelson, who has been a flop and one of the worst hitters in Major League Baseball, and just got sent down to AAA, and people were touting him as being rookie of the year caliber, at the beginning of the season. He went through the minors so quickly last year. And I think people just don't realize the adjustments that these young players have to make at the major league level. That's why Julio's performance to this point has been so impressive. And the last thing to wrap things up with him, and I hate to put this much pressure on both of you guys as Mariner fans, the Mariners come back after the All-Star break, riding this 14-game win streak, right, which we've talked about already. They lose 3 games to the Astros without Julio. Does that tell you, that's important, because if they win without him, then you're going like, okay, it's different. Now they lose without him. Is he the spark plug that carries them to the rest of the season?
Well, in my opinion, he was the MVP of the team in the first half, which is remarkable to say for a guy playing his first half. I mean, his first half of his career, and he's the MVP of a team hanging around in the playoff chase. And I think that he's just so critical to what they do. Center field, leadoff guy. He's really set the tone, energy guy. Like, the whole package is so important to what this team does. So he makes a big difference. And not having him in the lineup the last 3 days, especially with a team, you're playing the Astros, who have been one of the best teams in baseball, if not the best team in baseball. And not to have him, it's been noticed. It's been felt. So I think to compete with teams at the highest level, they need him. They need him in the lineup. He's that critical. And I think you're right about Torkelson. Julio's not the norm. Like, it is really hard to come up and be productive offensively in baseball right now. And Torkelson, to me, is more the norm. We've seen it with Kelnick, where he's come up, struggled, go back down, try and figure it out. If I were a Tigers fan, I wouldn't be freaked out about Torkelson. I think this is just more the norm. It's hard. And I feel like the gap is bigger now from the minors to the majors, more than it's ever been in terms of the pitching that you're facing. I just think hitting in the big leagues is incredibly hard. They find your weakness and they just go at you until you can adjust. And sometimes it just takes longer for young guys to adjust. So I think he'll be fine. I mean, Torkelson is an incredible player. So we'll see how it plays out, but it's not easy. It's not easy at all. It's
not easy now that you have players just, it seems like everywhere throwing 100 miles an hour. So
yes,
try to hit that. Hey, Gary, Gary Hill Jr. from the Seattle Mariners, broadcaster, and who's been around this game for a long time. And you're doing a lot of different things. We want to hear your story real quick. Can you tell Zach and I and those that listen to Big League Dream in the podcast? I know you're from Tacoma, and so I'm sure you saw a few Tacoma baseball games, minor league games in your day. How did you get started? Did you want to play Major League Baseball when you were a kid?
Well, yeah, of course, like every other kid. And then quickly I realized, well, that's not going to happen. I loved playing, though. I spent my whole childhood was baseball. It was playing as much as I could, baseball cards, as you mentioned, growing up in Tacoma, just south of Seattle. We had the Tacoma Tigers at the time, the AAA team for the Oakland A's, and then they became the Tacoma Rainiers. Went to a ton of those games as a kid. went to a lot of Mariners games as a kid. So I grew up a Mariners fan. And I was the kind of kid, I was always fascinated by radio broadcasts. And we had Bob Robertson in Tacoma. I would listen to games, and Dave Niehaus really ignited my passion for radio and play-by-play, the Hall of Fame voice of the Mariners for so long. I was the kid who I would have these notebooks. I had a million of these things, and I would play my own dice games with, like the Cardinals taking on the Mariners, and I'd roll dice, and double sixes would be a home run, and I'm broadcasting this fake game as I'm have this fake box score on the paper. That was me as a kid. Like, if you asked me, I don't remember a time where I didn't want to be a broadcaster for the Seattle Mariners specifically. I mean, it's always been what I've wanted to do. And that was just my childhood. It was baseball. I love it. I still love it. I love the game. And that was my intention as a kid, to be a Mariners broadcaster. What's funny about my story is, after I graduated high school and it was time to go to college, I looked around, and we had great broadcasters in Seattle, no matter what sport you look at. Kevin Calabro and Bob Blackburn before that with the Sonics, and it was Niehaus and Riz for the Mariners forever, Rondo with the Huskies, Robertson with the Cougars. But the reality is, it's been all the same guys my entire life at this point. And the reality was, like, this isn't realistic. Like, my dream, it's my dream, but it's a kid dream. Like, I'm not going to become a Mariners broadcaster. So I was going to school back east studying psychology. And I'll never forget this, because it was winter in Boston and it was awful. It was snow piled up. I was in the library, and it almost hit me like a thunderbolt. Like, that's a stupid reason not to go after your dream, not being realistic. So I decided in that moment, I transferred back to Washington State, who had a really good broadcasting program the next year. And I walked in, first day I was on campus, to there was a campus group that broadcast all the Cougar games. They let us do on the campus station all the basketball and volleyball and soccer and football and everything else, and walked in, joined, and it started right there, and just kind of slowly made my way up to where I am today. So that's the short of it.
I love that story. But when did you give up on the baseball dream? Was it like when you were 8 years old or something, like playing right field or something for your little league team?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's still in middle school. I was like, I can still do this. But then, yeah, I remember this moment specifically. I was a high school freshman, and the varsity game, there's a game going before us, and we played at Heidelberg Field, which is right by Cheney Stadium in Tacoma. It's a replica of Cheney Stadium, kind of on the same grounds, and that was our home field. Big park, and I'm a freshman, like 5-0, 130 pounds, nothing. And I'm warming up before this game, and Lincoln High School is playing before us, and they had a senior who, I don't know if people remember, Lawyer Malloy, who won Super Bowls with the Patriots, was an NFL safety forever. He was also a great baseball player. He played at the University of Washington. He played football and baseball. But I remember, as I'm warming up, I look over at third base while Lincoln's playing, and Lawyer Malloy is playing third, and he is a monster. He's enormous. And I'm looking at him and like, well, I don't belong on the same field at all with an actual athlete. So that's when I think officially it was all destroyed.
Did you ever play did you play varsity baseball your whole high school then?
Yeah, just a couple years, but yeah. I played a couple years at Stadium High School in Tacoma, which I loved. It was so fun.
Yeah.
Especially in the high school years. I remember the summers, I would get on 2-3 different teams and seemingly playing every single day, I've never had so much fun in my life playing baseball every single day. Just different jerseys. Who am I playing with today? I don't even know. I just throw on the jersey and go. It was awesome.
Zach, you probably relate to some of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's like summer ball, even back in Michigan too. So very familiar. But Dan, I heard him mention Dave Niehaus, and it's just like so special that he was in Seattle for all those years and things like that. I think about growing up in Michigan. So like in the 90s when I was a kid, we didn't have phones and like MLB app and all this extra stuff that they do now. So like being a Mariner fan then, it was basically I'd have to go get the video game and see who all the players were, get the paper. My dad had all the papers, check the box score, who was in the lineup, and play those guys wiffle ball in the backyard, Cora, the whole lineup. And I remember, so like Gary does the Mariners official podcast for us listeners that don't know. And I remember when I picked up Gary's podcast, I was hearing a lot of content I had never heard before in my life. It was weird because when you have MLB extra innings and it came out, the TV package, I was probably in high school, Gary, you would get the beginning of the game, like a little bit before first pitch. And then as soon as the last out was made, it would just say, boom, thanks for watching. So I never watched like the pre-game, never watched the post-game, anything like that. So 2014, I'm listening to your stuff and I'm hearing player interviews for like the first time, because I wouldn't YouTube player interviews. I remember hearing Mike Zunino's voice for the first time. Like, that's what Mike Zunino sounds like. It was like, and then he plays all of the old David Niehaus stuff. It's a bunch of content that I've like really never heard before. So it's mind blowing to hear some of that stuff, that the old school stuff that you piece in on there. It's really neat for us.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. That's good to hear. I love that stuff. Yeah, I grew up with Dave, so I really, I've really gone to work trying to get, because all the library, a lot of it was saved by Kevin Kremen. It was all saved on like cassettes and mini discs and everything. So over the years, because cassettes, the shelf life is actually not that long. I've had some crumble on me already. So over time, I've been digitizing our whole library, and so the good thing is it's all been saved. I've been shocked just kind of going around in other teams, just how much stuff is lost because you change radio stations, stuff doesn't get recorded. And then once it's gone forever. So I've kind of taken upon myself to try and save as much Mariners history as I can along the way.
Little side note there, Gary, when I was in Seattle for a conference, it was the year that Safeco opened. What year was the Safeco open?
99. Yeah,
99.
They played half a year in the Kingdom in 99 and moved into Safeco at the time, the second half of 99.
So I think the day before the first home game, I was in town for a conference, and I think the field is open to the public to come in and just tour it,
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in there and I'm like, oh man, I wish my son was here. I wish he was here to see this and everything. So I soaked it all in and brought back some newspaper articles or whatever, about the whole experience. But I did not get to see a chance to see a game. Zach's been there a few times to see games.
Yep. I mean, you flew me and mom out for my high school graduation gift. Went to a couple of games there, day game and a night game. They won both.
Nice.
And that was 2007. And then been back 2 other times, both in 2018. So the year after I saw you in Baltimore, Gary, flew out for 2 different instances that year. One was like a week with my wife. We went to like three Mariner games at Dodger series, and then we went to Rainier's game too. So nice. She fully supports the Mariner addiction. So it's okay, Gary. Don't worry.
Good.
I think it's interesting though, Gary, because obviously teams have fans all over the country, right? And those fans are like Cubs fans, Red Sox fans, right? You don't see a lot of Mariners fans traveling, or do you? I don't know. I'm curious.
It always blows me away. 2 different things on that. We do on the road. It's always impressive to see how many Mariner fans there are. In fact, we were just in DC and there was a rain out going on, or rain delay at the time, lightning storm and everything. So everyone was jammed in the concourse. I hadn't chatted. It was my first time at that ballpark in DC. So I wanted to go see the statues outside, and I'm walking through the concourse and it's like, every 2 out of every 3 people are walking by me have Mariners gear on. This is wild. On the other coast, they're everywhere. But the podcast, as Zach mentioned, that's where really it surprises me just how many people from all over the world are listeners and just checking in. And sometimes on the broadcast, we ask, hey, where are you listening tonight? That sort of thing. And it always blows my mind. We have a ton of people in Europe and Australia, New Zealand, just all over the world. People are listening to us, which is great. And that's why I would have loved to grow up in this era, the at-bat era, where you can pull down any game at any time. You can watch all these great players all the time. Because when I grew up, it just didn't exist. I mean, we had the Braves on TBS, so you could see some National League teams. Even the Mariners weren't on when I was a kid, not on TV all that often. So I envy kids growing up right now and as much baseball as they can watch. I probably wouldn't have been very productive, but it would have been fun.
Well, Zach does tell me a lot about what he learns from you, and I really appreciate you being on the podcast here on Big League Dreaming with Zach and myself, and the other two could not be here today. But one thing I did listen today to today's game, the Sunday, July 24th game, and I think it was you, because I'm pretty sure it was you. It was kind of hard to hear because we're having some internet issues here at the house. But you're the stat guy, right? You come up with some interesting stats to give. And did you have one today about pit players in the All-Star game and how they come out of the All-Star game playing in the regular game?
You know, I was just curious because Blackburn, who pitches for the A's, he had a rough game today. So he just pitched in the All-Star game, pitched an inning, and I was just curious. I don't know how to look this up is the thing, but I was curious, like, what's the most runs a pitcher has ever given up with their first outing after the All-Star game? Because he gave up 10 today. If that's not the record, I'd love to know what it is. But that's a rough, I mean, think about, you're in the All-Star game, you pitch a shutout inning. It's like, this is great. And then you go back and just get blasted your first outing out. That's rough.
I stink.
Yeah.
I stink.
Yeah. Right. All-Star. Great.
All-Star. Not really. Yeah. No. That's baseball's a humbling game, right?
It really is. It really is.
I think what's that, Zach?
McClanahan, right? Had the super low ERA, goes out, starts the game for the American League, and gives up back-to-back singles, gets an out, another 2 more hits, gives up, I think, 2 or 3 runs in the first inning. He hasn't given up, I don't know, a hit all year long, it felt like.
Yeah.
A humbling game for sure. Well, Gary, I'm curious, just if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about the hours you're putting in, because obviously you're passionate about it. Whenever you're really interested or, you're passionate about something, you're going to put in extra hours. What's an average week for you during the season?
Pretty much all the time. Starting in February, from the first pitch of spring training until October, it's grinding every day and all hours of the day. Especially the All-Star break, when we do have an off day, I try and take advantage with the family as much as possible. But it's all encompassing. The way I look at it, to do this job well, to be a broadcaster of the big leagues, I feel like it's got to be a lifestyle. It's the kind of thing that, you don't just prep for a game, in my opinion. You soak it all in. You're listening, you're reading. I try and consume as much as possible, and not just Mariner stuff, but all over baseball. So I like going into a game, having an idea what else is going on, because as a game plays out too, you never know what you'll need to know as a game is being played. So I feel like I'm all in all the time during the course of the season. And it's tough. The travel is a real thing. It's a grind. It's really difficult, especially our travel along with Oakland is the worst in baseball. We spend a lot of time on planes, so I try and work as much on planes as well. It's why sometimes you'll see a few days in between podcasts, just because it becomes hard with the schedule. But in terms of hours, I don't even want to guess. I don't think I even want to know. It's a lot. It's a lot of hours. But the good thing is too, when we get to the winter, it's a lot of downtime, a lot of family time. Try and just spend as much time with the family as possible, because it is tough during the season when I'm away for 10, 12 days at a time and come home, and then you're right back at the ballpark, and it's tough. I love it. It's not a complaint, but it can be difficult.
Zach, do you have any questions for Gary before we let him go here, because it's getting late? Wait, it's getting late for us on the East Coast time, right? It's not late for you.
It's still light here. It looks great.
Yeah, I guess, Gary, I know you've thought about this a lot, but like when playoff baseball comes back to Seattle, that first game and that atmosphere, I mean, can we even put it into words, right? Like, what's that going to be like for the team, for the front office, for the city, for the fan base? Like, what's that going to be like?
I'm not sure I can describe what that's going to be like and what my emotions are going to be like in that moment, because I grew up here. I grew up a Mariners fans. My friends are here. My family's here, all Mariner fans. And I know in my heart how much this fan base wants it. It has been a long time, as everyone knows, that the Mariners have had a chance to experience this. And for some Mariner fans, they've never had a chance to experience playoff baseball. I want this for those fans so bad. And I would love this to be the year that it happens. Seattle's a great baseball city. This place really gets behind the Mariners, especially when they start to roll. We saw it this weekend. It was disappointing losing 3 games to Houston, but the place was electric. A couple of sellout in the first game and near sellout in game number 2. I mean, these fans love the Mariners. They love baseball. I hope this is the year that we get to see playoff baseball. We will at some point. I don't doubt that, given where this thing is going. I just hope we get to see it this year. We'll see what happens, but I can't wait. I've thought about that moment, like the first moment when the crowd is just jacked, everyone's on their feet, and they take the field for the first time in a playoff game at T-Mobile Park. I don't think we'll be able to hear a thing. It's going to be wild. It's going to be wild.
I really hope the stars can align where I can be there for that moment. The thing is, it's going to be so last minute, right? Probably the last game of the year, and then might even have to win a wild card series on the road for them to play in Seattle. Fingers crossed, see what I can do to get there. But I've definitely recently, think about that moment a lot, because it's gonna, like you said, it's gonna be just nuts. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to. It's impossible to predict what's going to happen. There are so many teams kind of jumbled in the mix, and we've seen it already. We've seen some long winning streaks already, not just from the Mariners, but other teams. And you rip up. We saw it with the Blue Jays right now. You rip off 5-6 wins in a row. All of a sudden, you have vaulted yourself, a couple games clear of everyone else. And we're going to see more teams put together those kind of runs. We'll see what happens with the deadline. It's pretty wild that's right here. Just a few days away. So we'll see how much that's going to impact things. I don't know how active it's going to be either. It feels like there are not many sellers. There's a lot more buyers. I don't know how that's going to affect things when there's so many teams kind of looking for the same thing. Like, Mariners are good in their bullpen, but a lot of teams are looking for help there. I think everyone wants rotation help. It's just, we'll see how it plays out. It's just so hard to know what's going to happen. Like the Red Sox struggling right now, they have enough talent. They could easily rip off, winning 7 out of 8. And then they're right back in the mix. Tampa Bay, all kinds of injuries. They're right there still. So who knows? I have no idea, but that's the beauty of it, right? We never have an idea.
Speaking of not knowing, you had a dream to be a Mariners broadcaster. This was your lifelong dream. What would you say to other young people listening right now, or not even necessarily young, maybe someone that's just, in their 20s, like, what, maybe being a psychologist isn't what I want to do, right? What advice would you have for anyone that says, what, maybe I shouldn't give up on my dreams? Yeah,
I would say follow your heart and work towards your passion, because I think that's when we're at our happiest. I would like everyone to be happy. Find your happiness, whatever that is. And I think that's a great way to live your life if you can do it. And it's difficult to find your passion. And, but I will say, if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's not like I got a lot of natural talent. It was just a lot of hard work, a lot of right place, right time. But if I can do it, anyone can do it. Really. It's about hard work and wanting it more than anything. Yeah, it was tough to get. There were a lot of steps that we skipped to get to where I am now, and a lot of hours and a lot of lack of sleep along the way. But I had to work to get there. But I would say just follow your passion, follow your heart. Gary Hill Jr. from the Mariners broadcast team. We thank you so much for joining us here on Big League Dreaming, the podcast. Zach, anything you want to wrap things up, because this is your guy, it's your team, this is your city.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, just thank you so much for everything you do, Gary, with the podcast. Really awesome to give us that inside, glimpse to the team and whatnot. And for the Wheelhouse podcast too. I know you help out with that with Aaron Goldsmith. Shout out Colin O'Keefe. But talking to Jerry Dipoto, getting some inside scoop there too. So, I mean, I feel like we're going to look back and be spoiled with all the access that Dipoto gives you guys. But yeah, man, just thank you so much for taking the time. It's really cool for all of us tonight.
Anytime. Let's do it again. This was fun. And we'll have to talk around playoff time.
Yes. Hold you to it.
Thanks again.